From San Diego, California, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call on the HUG hotline at 858-876-5663. That's 858-876-5663. Or you can send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's show, we talk about the impact of moaning on your sexual intimacy.
And we have a quote from Anonymous to start the show, and it says, "There's nothing more exciting than hearing your spouse moan in pleasure and knowing you are responsible for it."
Yes, it is. This is something that I enjoy, and I'm hoping both men and women, husbands and wives out there agree with.
Wow, you can tell Tony's all fired up for today's show.
Ready, let's do it.
But before we jump into it, we start each and every One Extraordinary Marriage show with a hug. And a hug's an opportunity for you to hear from folks in the one family, folks just like you who are experiencing breakthrough or transformation in their marriage. And this week's hug is sponsored by HelloFresh, and you can check them out at HelloFresh.com. And we love HelloFresh. Mm-hmm. They offer a wide variety of chef-curated recipes that change weekly. So, you're not looking at the same thing. It's not like it's always Taco Tuesday. We both grew up in families like that.
Yes, we did.
With 3 plans to choose from, classic, veggie, and family, you're sure to find one that fits your needs and tastes. And, it doesn't matter if you're looking for a variety of meat, fish, and seasonal produce, or all vegetarian recipes, or even those quick and easy meals that the whole family will love. HelloFresh has you covered. And it's so convenient because you get to choose your delivery day, the one that works best for your schedule. And if you've got kids and, running here, there, and everywhere and meetings at night, it's nice to be able to pick that schedule, right? Doing it instead of like, oh, it's always got to be Monday, which gets really frustrating. And the other part of that is that you can pause your account for weeks at a time when you're out of town. So it's great if you're on the go with travel or you're going on vacation, things like that. And, I have to say, Tony and I really loved when we have our recipes come in. One of our favorite is the honey mustard glazed chicken and the sizzling beef stir fry.
And if you want to moan out loud in the kitchen, hey, you pick up HelloFresh, because honestly, the meals that you get to prepare together are seriously delicious.
And the nice thing about that, and why you do find yourself moaning with pleasure, is that the recipes, first of all, you get this amazing picture so you know what you're supposed to end up with, which is always a help, right? And then you've got the step-by-step instructions. So there's no guesswork on like, what do I do next? And because of this, we tried meals that I probably wouldn't have like made on my own, because I would have been like, oh, can I do this? And it makes it so easy when everything shows up in that HelloFresh box delivered right to your door. Everything's pre-measured. It's all labeled. It's all easy and ready to go. And you know what goes with what. So for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, visit HelloFresh.com and enter promo code OEM30. And this hug came in on an email, and it said, "Thank you so much for all you do. Your podcast and knowing that we are not the only ones going through these times in our marriage has given us so much hope. It's really changed my outlook on our marriage and how actions or no action really impacted us. We know we need to work on communication and recently bought a book bundle and your He Zigs, She Zags package. We can't wait to start. Your encouragement to be open and transparent continues to transform our lives. I know that my marriage can't get better if I don't voice what I'm feeling, and that has really changed my heart and my husband's. We love you guys. Please keep us in your prayers as we continue to work through our speed bumps."
You know it. We pray for the one family, and we just thank you guys for this awesome hug. This is great.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure, let's make sure that we put a link to He Zigs, She Zags in the show notes, just in case somebody else is like, oh, communication. Let's see what this couple's working through right now. And, as Tony said at the very start of the show, we're talking about the impact of moaning on your sexual intimacy. And the topic of being vocal actually came up in our bedroom the other day as we had the opportunity to have sex with no one in the house, which these days, between sports schedules, homeschooling, working out of the house, doing all this kind of stuff.
Everything.
Kids staying up late, kids coming home at different hours, right? It seems like we're in a season where it's not happening as easily as it has in the past years?
Yes, I would say that this fall has by far been one of the more difficult times for us, especially because we do enjoy awake sex, and we do enjoy those times when kids are gone and we have the house to ourselves more than a snippet of time.
And we are homeschooling this year for the first time ever. So that changes the dynamic of having somebody in the house. And we're like, oh, in the past, it's been everybody leaves in August and they come back in June, and we have Monday through Friday between August and June. And so we're adapting, but we had an opportunity to have that awake house empty sex.
We did.
Right. And afterwards, because, we've shared once or twice that you probably shouldn't bring things up about your sex life right in the middle if you don't want to put the brakes on what's going on.
Yeah, I was going to say, bring it to a complete halt. It's like hitting a brick wall.
Right. So you don't do that. So after we'd had sex the other day, Tony had commented on how when I'm vocal, how much it changes the dynamic in our bedroom. And so we got to thinking, right? Because this is how things happen for the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. If you ever want to know, how do Tony and Lisa get their ideas? Well, this is one of the ways that it happens. All of a sudden, Tony and I start having a conversation. We're like, what's that actually like? Right? What's going on? I mean, this is what's happening in our marriage, but what's going on in other marriages? Right? And how is this idea of being vocal in the bedroom? What does that look like?
And I would even say for us men, there is a part of us that is vocal. We want to vocalize our satisfaction as well. And yet I even find myself in these moments going, should I vocalize? Does Elisa even care? Does that impact this time together, this sex time we're having right now? And so I can even think too much in my own head in the moment, do I or don't I? And then that can also impact how I pursue Elisa during foreplay or even having sex.
I don't know if I've ever told you, I do enjoy you being vocal.
Okay. Well, I think
see?
that might be the first
Ladies
time.
and gentlemen, that
Amen.
you guys get to hear some things, it comes out right here on the show. But, it turned out as we started doing some research on vocalization in the bedroom that there are a few factors that are competing and in some respects actually in opposition to one another. And we kind of want to outline those. And then we're really going to be talking about how this impacts your marriage and what you can do about it. Right? Because actually, I just want to ask a question. Have you ever seen a silent sex scene? Right?
And you're saying like in the movies,
on a TV television shows. I mean, whenever they're portrayed, it's not like people, they might be trying to be quiet because they're trying not to be discovered, but there's usually some kind of vocal expression of pleasure.
I would say for the majority of that time, yes. For the majority of what you're asking, I would say yes.
Right.
Is it every time? I don't know. I'm sure somebody could find a scene. I'm sure somebody could find a scene and go, oh, well, these people didn't.
These people didn't. But that impact of that's what we see in represented in movies, or even if you're reading a book, right? She moaned with pleasure. This moan or that. So we've been conditioned. Both husbands and wives have been conditioned that the sexual act has an auditory component to it. And
then for us guys, if you've ever viewed pornography, video form of it, and I pray that, you are beyond that. Like I do. I pray that is broken free and off of you because it's not needed in your marriage. And we have shows that deal with pornography. But I remember personally, when I was watching videos, there was never a scene where there wasn't vocalization. And I've been away from it for 14 plus years now. And I still can recall that. Right. And so there's this conditioning for husbands that vocalization equals pleasure. For both sides. Right. And then there's this really interesting dynamic that's going on with women. And there was actually a study done in the Archives of Sexual Behavior. Now, the study is a few years old. It was June 2011. And we're going to put a link to it just so you guys can take a look at it. But there's this whole thing going on with women and their vocalization, right? A lot of the studies are like men vocalize because they're enjoying themselves, right? They're, by and large, for the most part, they're not faking it. They're not they're just, it feels good. I'm going to let the world know. Out comes the sound. Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. I'm not saying there's a problem. I'm just saying. No, I know, but simplicity. Simplicity. And even in our own lives,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there is that. I want to say it's almost like this release of like, oh my gosh, like I just want to scream at the top of my lungs.
Which if we didn't have kids in the house, you probably would on more than one occasion.
Right. And for those of you who are having sex and have had sex with your kids in the bedroom, or not in the bedroom, but in the house.
Like, what?
My bad. You know that though. That's a tough place to be. You want to, and at the same time you're like, sound and sleep machine, get louder.
Yeah. Come on. That's a whole other thing. We'll tell you guys about the sound and sleep machine later on. But women, on the other hand, vocalize for a whole bunch of different reasons, right? Sometimes they vocalize because they're in pain, right? Like it hurts, so I'm going to vocalize my pain. Sometimes they vocalize just because they want to speed things up. Because remember, all of our conditioning has been that vocalization is indicative of orgasm, so it leads to sex being over faster, right? So that's the whole fake it category, right? Sometimes they're saying, according to the researchers, are saying that women vocalize out of boredom. Again, speed things up. I'm bored. Maybe if I ooh-ah, he will finish faster.
He will ooh-ah as well, and
it'll be done.
We can move on with our lives.
Right? And then on the flip side, because if we talk about vocalization, we actually have to talk about the absence of vocalization too, right? And here are the reasons why women aren't vocalizing. They don't want the kids to hear, right? So we're going to be quiet because, again, those kids, like, we don't want our kids to know that we have sex. Folks, your kids will figure it out. Like, let me just be really clear. And it's healthy. Like, you don't have to go put a billboard outside. This is just a side note. You don't have to put a billboard outside, kind of like at the radio station that says on air. It doesn't have to say having sex. But it's healthy for your kids to know that you have a healthy sex life.
And in discussing it honestly with them in a healthy way, you'll be surprised at how that will begin to release you to see it at what it is and how beautiful it is to be able to express this to your children. And believe me, you're going to get in weird and sort of, not weird, but you're going to get in situations where you're going to have to discuss this with those kids of yours. And by all means, man, we've been there ourselves, and we're looking at each other and we're like, okay, how are we going to address this? Hey, Elisa, this is our daughter bringing it up. I'm volleying that to you. And being able to do that, though, allows us to be connected as well.
So that's just a little side note.
Yep.
We're not going to focus on that today, but just something to think about. Other reasons that women don't vocalize, because there's this idea, going back to those sex scenes that you've seen on TV, that good girls don't do that, right? That's what the vixens do. That's what all of the porn stars do, right? That's what other women do. But I'm a good girl, so we just kind of lay there and just don't move or make any noise, right? Or it feels awkward and embarrassing. Like, what are those sounds coming out of me, right? Better that I don't make any sounds and I do something embarrassing, right? And some women feel that way.
And guys as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, believe me, again, I will raise my hand on the, not the good girls don't do that, but on all of these, I will say that I feel these, and as men, we are also in this same boat. It's not like we live in some glass jar and these things don't come up. Right.
And the last reason is that, sometimes women don't vocalize because honestly, they're not being stimulated. Right. I mean, if it's not working, there's nothing. And so is it any wonder that our sex lives are so confusing around this topic of vocalization? Because women may or may not vocalize, and it may or may not be a good thing, right? It may be because they're not vocalizing because they just don't want the kids to hear, but it may be that they are vocalizing because they're bored. Like it's so
confusing.
It's so confusing. And so we've complicated this thing called our sex life, and we're sending out the ladies. Like I'm going to talk to you directly, and guys, you get to listen in because that's the nature of the podcast. But we're sending out these signals to our husbands, and they have no idea how to interpret them. Like, ladies, we are confusing the heck out of our bedrooms. We're causing them to have all this confusion and doubt in the bedroom, which leads to questions like, did you really have an orgasm?
Or are you just telling me that?
Are you into it? Was the sex good? Did I do okay? Were you in pain? Like, are you fake? Like, all of these things. Ladies, we do not need to complicate things. If we're confusing our husbands in this most intimate act, we're shortchanging ourselves in our marriage, right? And here's the thing. The only reason I can get behind the mic today and actually like call us all out on this is because I've done it.
Well, hence where this whole show came from, because that last time or two or whenever it was that we had sex that this was brought up, I was in this place of confusion. Like, did she have an orgasm? I'm pretty sure she did there. That wasn't, but I wasn't sure prior to that if Elisa was into it. What was it good? Was I performing? Like, I wasn't getting any feedback from her, and we had the house empty. Let me make that point clear too. The house was empty. There was nobody here. Our new place, we are butted up against a nature preserve. I mean, we can have the windows open and nobody's going to hear anything.
We do still have neighbors on both sides.
I know we have neighbors, but we're still far enough away. They're not going to hear much of anything at the time of day we were having sex. So I'm sitting there going, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the middle, which then makes me get a little anxious and going, can I just complete myself here and we'll just move on?
Right. And so, the reason I get, like I said, that I can come behind the mic and share this because I've done it, right? Prior to us doing the 60 Days of Sex Challenge, which if you haven't listened, it's episode 1. Mm-hmm. You can find that. We'll link to it here in the show notes.
Sure.
And after that, we started the Intimacy Lifestyle, which is episode 140, Scheduling Sex. We'll also link to that. I was the wife. I would fake things. I would fake orgasms to speed things up, right? I would fake my, I'd have real vocalizations, but they were faked in terms of what I was actually portraying to Tony. I wanted him to think that I was orgasming so that it would just get it done. And a big part of that was because we weren't connecting, right? And there were times when I wouldn't vocalize because it felt awkward. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, and part of that was because we had porn as a factor in our marriage, right? So we've got a couple of competing things here, right? I've got this idea that Tony and I really aren't connected. So can we just get sex over with?
Porn. And I would also say your romance novels.
I
would add to that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
That reading of it on your side, and you did we did a show specifically on that,
on erotica,
mm-hmm. on erotica, and how I'm sure that even impacted you, even though you don't think it did. I'm sure it had some underlying current on you.
I so wish. There are times when I wish that the podcast was video, because Tony right there got a little worked up, and all of a sudden, he's pointing across the microphone to me. He's like, "Hold on." That one did impact. You guys can't see it, but you might have heard it in the change of his tone of voice. But here's the thing: when we're not engaged together in the moment with our spouses, we are selling ourselves and our marriages short, because going through all of those questions in the moment, right? Like Tony said, all of a sudden he's got performance anxiety, right? Or after, it's a huge buzzkill on the moment. Mm-hmm. Right? We're in this place where we're like, what does that vocalization mean? Because we've confused it and given it, 7 different definitions. Right? And some of you right now are like, oh my gosh, that's totally our marriage. And here's what happens. When you create doubt or cause doubt to seep into your marriage, it starts to erode a person's confidence. Right? Tony even talked about it. Is she, isn't she? Can I just, am I going to be able to finish now? Right? It starts to inhibit how the two of you relate to one another. Because when that confidence comes down, so does your willingness to try new things, right? To make suggestions, because you're like, oh, maybe this is just another form of rejection. Let me tell you, ladies, faking it is another form of rejection, right?
It truly is.
And I've never said that out loud. It literally is just one of those things that popped out of my mouth. But as I speak it, I realize the truth behind it. When we are faking it, when we are vocalizing simply for the hurry up and get it done aspect, we're devaluing our husbands and our marriage, because we're saying, you know what, I'm not going to invest the time in this experience with you, mm-hmm. right? That's rejection. So we've got to be those couples that get real and get in the moment, right? We've got to say, you know what? It's time to take our sex life to the next level. I mean, that was the hashtag for One Extraordinary Marriage this year, hashtag next level. And it's time to do that, to explore what we're capable of and not what society says we have to do or not do, right? Like, I don't care about, if you think good girls do or don't or whatever. What's working in your marriage? What's going to take your sex life to the next level? And guys, let me be real clear. This is your marriage. But you have to live your marriage authentically for it to be extraordinary.
Yeah, you have to be open, honest, and transparent, just like we are here each and every week on the show, right? In your own lives, I hope, after completing 400 plus shows here, that what we have shown you of being open and honest and real, you can then do it in your own lives. Because through that, you're going to be able to experience that amazing sexual intimacy that you both desire.
Right. And I know some of you are saying, Tony, so that's all fine and dandy. You guys have figured out what this looks like, but I can't change now. Like, we've been doing this for years, and my spouse will be devastated. They'll be hurt, be angry. We want to share some specific things that the two of you can do. But I just want to remind you, and, Tony even said earlier as we were opening the show, one way to moan out loud is to make sure that things are going well in the kitchen. And, getting that whole spirit of vocalization, it can start with what you're having for dinner.
It's all right.
Right? Because a good plate of food, you've done it when it sits on the table and you're like, and that's real.
That is.
So don't forget to get $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Visit HelloFresh.com and enter promo code OEM30. So let's start at the beginning, right? The first thing that the two of you have to do is you've got to get comfortable talking about your sex life, right? It doesn't just happen. And we see this time and time again that talking about your sex life is one of the biggest areas of struggle for couples, right? It's so important that we're actually discussing this as part of the Love Deeper workshop that's happening on November 9th. And for those of you that want to get more details about that, go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/lovedeeper, because there's a whole section of this workshop that deals with your sexual intimacy, right? And being able to say, what, am I comfortable talking about this? What are my expectations, right? If we can start saying, what, like, here's what works for me. I mean, the other day, Tony and I were talking, and when I brought up the fact that, I used to fake it. And it wasn't this horrendous, like, I just dropped a bomb on our marriage, because we've spent the last 9 years, 10 years, I don't even know where we're at now, working on our relationship. But, and I've shared it in the past, right? So this wasn't, earth-shattering revelation, but it still doesn't feel good when I bring it up. But being able to talk about it, right? What works, and ladies, you got to spend a little time with yourself. Right? You need to ask yourselves, why do you or don't you vocalize? Right? And I know you've probably heard this once or twice, but it's impossible to communicate what's going on with you if you don't know yourself. Right? If he's like, well, why don't you moan out loud? I don't know is a cop-out. It's a cop-out. Spend some time with yourself and figure it out.
The better answer there, both ways it goes, instead of saying the I don't know, is the appropriate way to look at this, because if you haven't thought about it, it is an I don't know, probably. The better way to do that, so you leave it open-ended, so your spouse can then bring it up again, or so you guys can table it to talk about it again, is to go, you know what? Give me a day to think about that, and then get back to me, or I'll get back to you. Because this way, at least we're not shutting down that communication. And again, rejecting our spouse. We're saying, hey, you know what? I'm not sure. I'm confused, honestly, right now. And yet, let me just do a little soul searching, and in a day or 2 days or our next coffee break, let's bring that up and let's talk about that again. And let's make sure we spend some time on that during our coffee break together. Both of us sharing that. And what does that look like?
And as you start to explore that, like, do you know what works for you? Right? Because if you don't know what works for you in terms of stimulating yourself, it's going to be really hard for him to know where he should go. Like, let me be real clear. There are times when I have to give Tony directions because I'm like, you're a little bit off. He would much rather get let me move my hand, or you're a little bit to the left or to the right, than for me to be like, well, this stinks. He's completely missed the mark. And I guess I'm just going to lay here. Whereas if I give him a little, hey, like scooch, half an inch, whatever, then it's going to be good for both of us.
And then once he's there, right? If he's there, and guys, same with you, because our women, when they are touching us in ways that bring sexual pleasure, right? We also have those same feelings. And we can then verbalize through moans, through words, to let them know that how much we appreciate that, how much we enjoy that. It's almost like we're teaching each other what we enjoy. But if we just lie there and nothing is ever said, nothing is ever done, it gets hard to know. And a guessing game is the worst place we want to be in our bedroom. Right. Tell me so that I do know, because I want this to be pleasurable for you. And hey, we have sex a lot, and not every time it was 100% home run, out of the ballpark. But we learn,
right? And
we grow, and we go, hey, you know what? At our coffee break, how was gourmet time? Well, this week it was a 7 out of 10. It was a 5 out of 10. Well, why is that? Well, you know what? This was happening, and you weren't giving me any indication if it was good or not. Mm-hmm. And I felt confused and lost. So this week, can we get back on track?
Right. And, it's also looking at what are those distractions, right? Like sometimes you just got to eliminate the distractions. And then ultimately you need to create an environment where the two of you encourage connection and vocalization. For some of you, it's going to be choosing a different time of day to have sex, right? It's going to be looking for those opportunities when maybe the house is empty, right? When you can get everybody in the house, and maybe it's a quick nooner. Maybe it's all of the kids are at sports events on Saturday, and you're like, you know what? We'll be a few minutes late to your game, right? We've got to run a few errands, got to do something.
Or you got to drop them off for the hour before, the hour and a half before, so they can do all their warm-ups, and you're right around the corner or something, and you can get back.
The other thing is you've got to create the environment within the bedroom. So that might be like the sound and sleep machine that you've heard us talk about. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
And also we have our 11 must-have items.
Right.
Any of those items could add to it. So you can go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/must-have for those. But any one of those items can add the sexual pleasure. We talked about it in the Lube It Up show even. Allowing to have lube on your hands or on your private parts can make a huge difference between you being able to verbalize and moan your pleasure than sit there with friction that is hurting you.
Yeah.
Been there, done that, know it.
Big takeaway from the Lube It Up. Friction is not good.
No.
Friction is not good. And, Tony alluded to this last point just a couple of minutes ago, but the reality is that, when we were in high school or maybe elementary school, wherever they start sex ed these days, it was all sterile and it was a textbook. Like, can we all just be real clear on that? Kind of boring, health, whatever. You're married now. Okay. You're adults. You're allowed to be naked with each other. You have the best opportunity to do sex ed that you've ever had. So would you please start learning how each other's bodies work? Right? And vocalization is a big part of that. It's that feedback loop that we've talked about in previous shows, where if it works, if it's pain, then have a different sound for that, or actually voice, that one doesn't feel so good. Mm-hmm. Right? If it's something else, if you're bored, be like, we need to try a different position. Right? There are different ways to get around that, but don't make the vocalization so confusing. Vocalize for pleasure. Be really clear commit to that for the two of you, that you're going to vocalize for pleasure, so that we don't have to have all of these other questions and doubts and what if and did that. And guys, the vocalization is going to make a huge difference in your bedroom. It's going to foster that connection. And like you said, at the very start of the show, there's something about, hearing your spouse moan in pleasure and know that you are responsible for it.
Yeah. So this week we challenge you, and we're going to be challenging ourselves, honestly, to do just that. We're gonna challenge ourselves to moan in pleasure and get in alignment with each other, so that way we know, and hopefully you guys will know as well, what is bringing pleasure to you guys in your bedroom. We love you guys. Have a fantastic week. We can't wait to hear how this show and all the other shows have impacted your lives. Don't hesitate. We love your hugs, so give us a call at 858-876-5663 or send in your hug at hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. Love you guys. Have a fantastic week, and we'll catch you next week.